The focus of today's teaching session is what is a quantum conscious leader? And I know that you may have been studying all the manuals and the workbooks and everything like that, but it's really such a fundamental understanding, such a fundamental topic as to why this idea of a quantum conscious leader is so important as we rapidly move out of the old 3D world, the old matrix, the old uh, state of imprisonment, and into the 5D reality. And I've heard people talk about this already as being the case. The 5D reality is here if you have the ability to let go and accept it, and embrace it and live it, be it. And so being a quantum conscious leader in this new 5D reality is so fundamentally important. And let's talk about what that is. So today we're going to go on a journey and we're going to talk about, we're going to begin at the beginning, coming into this world. All of us came into this world, and we're going to talk about what that was all about, why we came into this world. A lot of people question it. The challenges that we're facing, I'm going to overview that, the consequences of the challenges, and how we live inside that context, the pathway to move out of the old 3D world and into the 5D world, and then the remembering. And this is why I think we're here, is to really remember who we really are and why we're here. And then the realization of that remembering when we actually move past the remembering and into let me just hide that, past the remembering and into the realization of what that actually means to our life and to every life we touch, to every life we're connected to. And if you know anything about quantum physics, you know that you are connected to everything. And so, what happens with you internally as an individual, as a sovereign being, is actually impacting everything and everybody else as well. And so, okay, let's move into this. Coming into this world, we chose to be here. Um, and we chose our divine reason for being. Now, a lot of people have a lot of different ideas about this, but I'm going to share with you my particular perspective on this. My belief is that in another dimension, um, a much higher dimension, as a spirit self, I actually chose to come back to Earth, and I chose my divine reason for being. Now, I've actually envisaged sitting down and talking to Source and saying to Source, I've decided to go back. I want to go back. And Source has said to me, are you sure about this? You know, how difficult it is in this world. Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm willing to take on the challenges. I'm willing to do the work. And I've decided what I'm going to do when I'm there, what my the vision is, what my purpose is for being there. And Source says to me, but Glenn, you know that as soon as you are born into human form, as soon as your spirit moves into human form, you're going to forget this conversation. You're going to forget what it is you decided to do until you find a way to remember. And it's like, no, I'll find a way to remember. I'm okay with this. And so I believe we all went through that. It is our choice. We weren't sent back here. Somebody didn't force us to go back here. Somebody didn't say, you better go back there because that's what you're meant to do. No, no, we're sovereign beings. As eternal spirits, we decide for ourselves what we're going to do, whether we stay or whether we go, what we actually do. And I believe that level of sovereignty, that level of freedom of choice that we have, was exercised. And it was like, I'm going back, and I've decided that this is what I'm going to do this is going to be my contribution when I go back, my reason for being, my uniqueness, my gift, my special gifts, my magic. And all I've got to do is find a way to remember it. But then we know at birth, we immediately forgot who we really are and why we are here. And then the deceptive imprinting commenced. Now, why do I call it imprinting? Because we know that from brain science, from neuroscience, that we are born into a theta state of being. You know, most people right now watching this video or in this training session are in a beta state of mind. And so we can move from beta to alpha to theta. And the theta state of mind is where our conscious mind and our non-conscious mind are basically connected. The theta state of mind. So as children, as babies and as children, up to about the age of 7, we're operating in the theta state of mind. And that means that the imprinting phase from the evil forces are doing a tremendous job of, instilling beliefs into us about how we actually operate in this world. Now we know, don't we, that the vast majority of that imprinting, those beliefs, what we learned, didn't serve us. And much of it came from our parents, or it came from, the environment we're in. It came from our siblings, our family. It came from the church. It came from, education, or the circles we're operating in. And those circles had all been through this imprinting phase as well. So the best of their intentions was to help us, but they were imprinting us with things that actually didn't work for us in our true and natural state of being. And so those imprinting years from 5 to 7, the Jesuits used to say, give me the boy until he's 7 and I'll give you the man. And what they really meant was, we will imprint that person with everything they need to know, all their fundamental beliefs up to that age. And then that will be their operating system. Unless, of course, they learn how to change the operating system, to update it, or to purge the old operating system and put in a new operating system. And so what are we doing here at the Quantum Conscious Leadership Institute? We're helping you to purge the old and useless operating system of beliefs, of what we felt were truths, our truth, which weren't true. And we're installing a new operating system that is going to take us out of the 3D reality and into the 5D reality, where we can operate as our natural self. Because in those imprinting years, we were unnatural. It was unnatural beliefs. It wasn't natural. And so now we're moving into the natural way of being. And so when we went through that imprinting phase, the whole idea was subjugation. And what's subjugation? That's imprisonment, that's slavery, that's compliance. And we know that we're all pretty clear on this is the world we've been living in. And so compliance, disconnection, isolation, and disease. And when I talk about disease, I don't just mean physical disease, I mean mental disease, emotional disease, dis-ease, um, spiritual disease. And so we're kind of completely out of balance, aren't we, with that kind of imprinting that we've learned from those imprinting years up to the age of 7 and then beyond, but pretty much our entire life. And I'll talk about that here. The life that we've been living in the old 3D world is a world of illusion. The Matrix. I went back and watched the Matrix movie the other night, and it's actually not a movie. It's really a documentary, isn't it? And it really talks about the world in absolute detail. Now, that movie was 20 odd years ago, and it really explained the world we're living in detail. A world of manipulation, a world of deception, a world of misinformation and disinformation, a world of lies. And it's in every facet of our life, isn't it? The economy and the markets, all fabricated, politics and government. Aren't we really finding out about all of that now? What our leaders have been doing? I'm not talking about the current leadership of Trump and so on. I'm talking about previous leadership in every government, in every facet of society, everywhere. And I'm not talking about everyone, because I know there's a lot of good people in this world who have been trying to do the right thing and have understood who they really are and why they're here. It's a smaller population, but the vast majority of those in power, in education, in religion, in business, in media, um, in technology, have been holding us back, have been manipulating us, have been serving us things that actually don't serve us. And so we've lived in this world which promotes insecurity, uncertainty, and fear. That's the world we've been living in. And that world right now, this 3D world, is in a state of rapid collapse. And what a beautiful thing to see. It literally is falling apart at the seams. It's diminishing. It's being deconstructed. And in many respects, it is evolving. And so we're seeing that before our eyes right now. But the fundamental issue out of all that, of course, is dealing with the imprinting and dealing with the internal uncertainty. And, in my business life, and I've been a leader in business in the 3D world for over 30 years, and I have seen this everywhere, in everything, in the people that I've worked with and the clients that I've been serving, is this fundamental internal, this state of internal uncertainty. And what is that state? Well, we don't really know who we are and why we're here. We just don't know. Mark Twain once said, the two most important days of your life are the day that you are born and the day that you find out why. Now, isn't that the primordial question that has plagued humanity for time immemorial? Who am I and why am I here? And this not knowing that creates this incredible internal uncertainty. And so, what is that? The consequences of that? Well, you don't have clarity of divine vision and purpose. That conversation that you had with Source, where you absolutely were in a state of complete clarity, where you knew exactly who you are. You knew exactly why you wanted to come back to Earth in this incarnation and do what you wanted to do, what your divine purpose was. So you knew your vision. You had a vision for how you could contribute to this society, to these people, and beyond. And you had a purpose that goes with that vision, and you were very clear about it. And they are divine. There's no doubt about it. And so we literally are living in a state. The vast majority of us, and I'm talking about all of us, but the vast majority of us are living in a state where we have no clarity of divine vision and purpose. We lack meaning and fulfillment. I saw a major study out of Britain where they did a massive sample. I think it was like 50,000 people. And what they found that was plaguing people's lives was that they felt they were getting up every morning with no meaning. They were living meaningless lives. They had no fulfillment. There was no real joy in any state of their life. They were literally going, like a robot, um, from day to day, just not living, existing, in many respects, surviving. And so people said the biggest challenge that they faced in their lives from this survey was that they were in a state of meaninglessness, that there was no fulfillment, there was no joy. Why is that? Well, it's because people don't have clarity of vision and purpose. These things, of course, are intrinsically connected. And so um, life then is just a constant struggle. It is a constant series of failures because we've been programmed to be like this. It's not our natural state of being. And when we work out that this is not our natural state of being, that this kind of existence, this kind of world, this kind of awareness and consciousness is not who we really are, we'll start to move out of this. But the fact of the matter is, the vast majority of people are still not there. So they're existing through force of will. And they're exhausted. You hear people talk about this all the time. I'm absolutely exhausted. I get up in the morning exhausted. I go through my day exhausted. I go to bed at night exhausted. And while I'm asleep, I get no rest. I don't actually rest. There's no peace. People are not in a state of peace. They're absolutely exhausted from everything. And so, but still, and I know this happens, I've spoken to so many people about this, and people, when they actually really sit quietly and talk and, really go into a state of, understanding who they really are, they talk about this soft echo of potential. I really feel, sometimes that I'm just capable of so much more. I can do so much more. I can be so much better. But why is it so hard? How come I don't know? Well, because they haven't found the key. They haven't been through the process of the remembering of who they really are. And then beyond that process of remembering, actually being able to move into that state of being. And so they have no idea how to actually access it, do they? And one of the reasons we're here in the Quantum Conscious Leadership Institute is to go through this stage, is to be able to get clarity around that soft echo, to be able to turn that soft echo into a vision and purpose so that you can then start to exercise, these new skills and capabilities, this new self-awareness, and shift into an expanded consciousness. You can actually live with meaning and fulfillment and contribution. And isn't that why we're really here? I'm pretty sure it is. And so the consequences of not being able to understand who you really are and why you're here, you go to the default, and the default is this thing called the ego. You can do a lot of research yourself on the ego and what the ego really is. But we know, I'll give you my really simple distillation. The ego is all about control. You want to control everything internally and externally. And of course, that leads to a massive state of, confusion, a massive state of lower level vibrations like, frustration, struggle, insecurity, uncertainty, and fear. But the ego also is all about me. It's all about me. Look at me, look at me, look at me. And I want more. And the ego is all about control, me, and more. And then, of course, there's those beliefs, those fundamental beliefs that were imprinted from the ages of 0 to 7 and then beyond. Because, as we moved into the system, we just found that everything that we'd learnt in those imprinting years was reinforced and then some. And so that false and deceptive programming just continued. And the more we became aware, the more we became conscious, the harder these systems worked to ensure that your enslavement, and really, it is slavery. The 3D world really is all about slavery. It was perpetrated on us. And so we live in a state of fear. We feel unworthy, unworthiness. In much of the work that I've done in coaching leaders, I've come across this feeling of unworthy. I'm not good enough. How can I actually do this? I'm pretending. I'm literally deceiving these people because they think I'm the leader, but I don't think I am. I actually don't think I'm good enough. The number of leaders I've had these kinds of conversations with is extraordinary. Yet they're leading, in many respects, a lot of them, multi-million dollar companies, but they're faking it. They're literally working through ego and through a set of false beliefs, but they still feel this sense of unworthiness. They still feel this sense of scarcity and lack. They still feel, a state of anger when things don't work out, and the vast majority of things don't work out because we're operating from limiting beliefs, which is our internal state. That, of course, affects our thinking. It affects our actions. It affects our emotional state. It affects everything. So if we're working from false information, which is low level information, we're going to be in a low level energetic state of being. And anger is a very low level energetic state. If you look out at in the social media, you can still see a lot of this when people don't get the kind of news that they want. They get angry, they get frustrated, they lash out, don't they? Blame and shame is what happens. I see this with leaders of certain channels where they deliver news, and a lot of people are not happy with that news, and so they lash out. Now that is coming from anger. That is very low level vibrational energy, and it's very destructive. In many respects, anger is a state of self-sabotage because we know from quantum physics that like energy attracts like energy. Anger attracts anger. Frustration attracts frustration. It's just the law of the universe. And so these are pretty dire consequences for not really understanding our natural state of being, who we really are, and why we're here, our divine reason for being, our divine vision, our divine purpose. And so, further on these consequences, it kind of starts to then project out to every facet of life. Now, I saw this major study, and this is some time ago, where the increase in stress, anxiety, and depression, and this is from the years 2014 to 2020, this study was done. It elevated from 58 to 86%. Now, this is prior to the COVID years, right? This is prior to COVID. And so we already had a catastrophic situation on our planet that this research reflected. 58% of people, this was a global study, by the way, and it was a global study in the workplace. And so from the level went from 58% in a state of stress, anxiety, and depression to 86% in 2020. And that's pretty catastrophic when you think about it. And then, of course, the COVID years happened. And so, can you imagine what happened to that percentage in those years from 2020 and beyond, in those 3 years of, the perpetration of lockdowns and the mandates and the fear and the anxiety and everything that happened in that time. It's not necessary for me to go into it. But beyond that, we saw this in the workplace as well. This was an aligning study done by a different organization. Almost 90% of all people are actively looking for a career or life alternative. That means they're not happy in their current workplace. They don't feel as though they're doing anything of value, of meaning. And so, can you imagine 90% of the entire workforce population on planet Earth are actually looking for something better in terms of their career, in terms of their life? Doesn't that say a lot about what's going on, the state of being in the population? And we know also, I've used this figure many times, but around 65% of all business fails inside the first 3 years. 65%. It's an incredible number. And so we're literally showing that we don't have the skills and capabilities to actually run a business. Or at the beginning, we didn't come up with a good idea. We didn't understand how to create a concept inside the marketplace that was actually going to work, that was going to be demanded. And so 65% of all business failing in the first 3 years says a lot about people's awareness, their consciousness, and their understanding, their skills and capabilities to be a leader, to run a business. It's a devastating number. All of these numbers are quite devastating numbers. So we know that the 3D approach to leadership and life is actually designed to create bewilderment, hardship, and failure. Now, this is the world that we're moving out of, but it's still with us. In many respects, it's still operating. We've still got to operate inside it. That doesn't mean we need to be compliant. It doesn't mean we need to play that game. And certainly I can tell you I'm not playing that game. And I know that many people here in the Quantum Conscious Leadership Institute have the very committed intention of not playing that game, of playing a different game, of playing the game of your true, natural, higher self as we move into the 5D reality. And so holding on to this false programming through limiting beliefs, through the thoughts that go with that, the words, the emotions, the actions, it really means that you're going to be left behind. it really does mean you're going to be left behind. So this is in many respects, it's the reality that we're living in, that a great many people are just not letting go of what they currently know, their current life. In many respects, they feel comfortable with it. They know it. They feel secure in the knowingness of what life really is to them in the state of being. They don't really understand what it could be yet, and so they're holding on. And we see this going on in many countries all across the planet, but certainly not here. And so the pathway. Let's now talk about the pathway. I've talked about this many times, that the idea of getting out of that crazy monkey beta mind. They call the beta state of mind the crazy monkey mind. And if you understood the brain waves from beta to alpha to theta to delta to gamma, that the beta state of mind is the most chaotic state of mind. We're literally working in our conscious mind, and we are in a state of complete chaos. So we're thinking many different things at once. I've seen research from neuroscience that says we can have anywhere between 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day. Now, a lot of people think their thoughts are who they are, but I can tell you they're not who you are. Neuroscience has proven that they don't know where thoughts come from and they don't know where they go to, but they do know that they are not who you really are. But a lot of people think they do. So they're falling into the trap of this chaos. Being still means moving out of the beta state of mind and into the alpha state. And the alpha state is the creation state. The alpha state is the awareness state, because in the alpha state, you actually have access to your immense intuitive powers. And it's those intuitive powers that will really provide you with the answers. So being still and going within is the first major step into on the pathway to higher self-awareness, to a state of I am consciousness. And I am means source consciousness, who you really are in your higher state of being and why you're here. And when you do that, go be still and go within, you are actually accessing your intuitive truth. Being still and listening, letting go of the thoughts, just observing the thoughts, because the thoughts are not providing you with the answers. It's this intuitive feeling. Intuition comes from your non-conscious mind. Many people call it the subconscious or the unconscious. I prefer to call it the non-conscious mind. You get these intuitive sensations. A lot of people will explain it as a gut feeling or something like that, but it's a state of knowingness, and it's very different in its context and in its concept from a thought, a random thought which comes and goes. It is a feeling, a knowingness, and that's where the truth comes from. That's where the answers come from, and that's where you start to elevate your self-awareness, your understanding of who you really are. And it's a really very important first step on the pathway to accessing and being aware of who you really are and why you're here, moving from this state of self-awareness, the elevation of self-awareness into the I am consciousness and the expansion of that I am consciousness. Because consciousness, the I am consciousness, is actually really what the game is all about. The game is all about being conscious and being in a state of I am consciousness, which is your true higher self, your spirit self, where you originally came from before you entered into this physical three-dimensional realm. And so when you start to move into I am consciousness, a part of the pathway is to understand energy. And this is why I spend so much time talking about energy, because energy is everything. Everything is energy. Your energy, I'm energy. The chair you're sitting on right now is energy. Everything is energy, and energy cannot be destroyed. It cannot be created. it can be transmuted. So you can shift energy from one thing to another. So you can shift your energy out of anger, out of frustration, out of disappointment, and into joy. And it's your choice. A natural example of how energy can change is water. And so water can be in a fluid state of being. It can be transmuted into um, ice. It can be transmuted into steam. There are different states of beings for water, and that's really an energetic transference. And so this is the quantum reality that we're living in. We're all starting to understand, the fundamentals of quantum physics, quantum mechanics, whatever you want to call it. It's this new science that was really discovered only about 100 years ago, which in many respects has defeated many of the old Newtonian physics um, ideologies or dogma. And of course, we know that much of what Newton created and helped us to understand is true, but much of it is not. For example, Newton basically said we're all cogs in a wheel and our life is predetermined. Well, we know from quantum physics that that is absolutely not true. We are creators. In our natural state, we are divine, sovereign creators. And so we can create our reality because in the quantum field is actually a state of potential. And they know from the double slit experiment that once you observe the reality, which means once you overlay the potential with your intentions, that's when you materialize what you're observing. Wave turns into particle. And so this is what quantum physics is all about in the very simplest forms. It's the understanding of energy. And then, of course, there's the next step on the pathway is to become visionary. And, what does visionary mean? It means I have a vision for my life. It's unique. It can only happen for me. It's not the same as everybody else. So it's not, you've got that vision, oh, I'll borrow your vision and that'll do. No, no, that's not the case. Every single one of us is absolutely unique. We have our own special gifts which we're here to share, and that can be expressed in the vision. And at the Institute here, of course, one of the most fundamental things we are helping you to do is to articulate, put into words your vision in a very simple, short, and succinct statement, because that's what clarity is all about. When you actually get to the state of saying, I can articulate my vision in just 3 or 4 words or 5 words. And this is the why I am here. Your vision is your why. And so, what is that? That is consciousness. That is you being conscious of your natural state of being, your higher state of being, your spirit state of being. And then, of course, there's this ability to be the creator. Once you understand that your energy and everything is energy, once you understand what your vision is, then as a infinite divine sovereign creator, you can create your reality. And isn't that what we're here to learn to do? As leaders, we're here to learn how to create our own reality. Um, and that, of course, is what leadership is really all about. So now you see how this works, right? Energy, visionary, creator, quantum, conscious, leadership. So I didn't create the Quantum Conscious Leadership Institute, just because I thought it was a cool thing to do. QCLI, Quantum Conscious Leadership Institute. Boy, that's a cool name. Let's do that. No, no. It is done for a very specific reason because it's all about energy. It's all about being visionary. It's all about being a creator. And that's what the new world, becoming the new breed of 5D leader, is really all about. And so moving from, mastering yourself internally, having internal certainty, because if you're actually looking to battle external certainty with internal certainty, if you're looking to, let me say that again, if you're looking to battle external uncertainty, with internal uncertainty, then you're only going to create chaos. The only way you battle external uncertainty, the only way you transmute external uncertainty into certainty is through internal certainty, in internal mastery. So when you master the internal, when you understand who you really are and why you're here, your vision, your purpose, your reason, your divine reason for being, you understand your true higher self. That's when you become the creator that masters the external, because the external is no longer uncertain because you're creating it. You're the creator. And if there's, of course, there's going to be events externally that are not subject to your creation. That's okay. You'll be in a state of being where you can absolutely calmly and resourcefully move into and through and beyond those states and turn anything that looks like a challenge or an issue into an opportunity. And that's really the game. That's what quantum conscious leadership is all about. It's making everything by design, by passionately held intention, an opportunity to grow and meaningfully progress. This is the game. And so, what is my definition of quantum conscious leadership? Quantum conscious leaders are free to realize the joy of source self, divine reason for being, while inspiring others to do the same. Let me say that again. Quantum conscious leaders are free to realize the joy of source self and divine reason for being, the joy to realize source self and divine reason for being, while inspiring others to do the same. So there's the leadership aspect. So it's self first, then others, always self first and others. So quantum conscious leaders are free to realize the joy of their own source, self, and divine reason for being, and then inspire others, not lead others, not coerce others, not tell others, inspire others to do the same. That's why we're here. This is what quantum conscious leadership is all about. This is my definition of what quantum conscious leadership is all about. You will not find this anywhere else. When I was developing this presentation, I thought, you know what, just going to go in there and look at what the definitions of leadership are all about. Every single definition of leadership that I read from Harvard, from Forbes, from Yale, from many of these institutions, and also in many other areas, most of it's AI generated anyway, is very, very low level. It's all about profit. It's all about achieving your goals. It always comes back to making money. And so that's the 3D reality of leadership that we're moving out of, detaching from and moving into a new reality where we're here to serve, we're here to contribute. And to do that, first and foremost, we need to realize the joy of our own source self and divine reason for being, and then help others to do the same. This is the whole idea of shifting from internal mastery to external mastery, to be the creator. And so let's go on the journey of what that means from an institute perspective. Well, there's three core, learnings, isn't there? There's the quantum conscious leadership core learnings, and that in itself is the workbook that many of you have already got and are. And I'm talking to the lifetime members of the Institute here, have been studying. There's the operations leadership and there's the financial leadership, both of which are specific teachings in their own right. And then, of course, don't forget that shifting from that, we move into PQ, IQ, EQ, and SQ. Now, this is absolutely unique to the way we're doing quantum conscious leadership. I've never seen this anywhere else on the planet. And it's our particular way. So, what is PQ? PQ is physical intelligence, PQ. And this is all about understanding how to physically live well. And, you cannot be a great leader unless you are fit, strong, healthy, powerful, and youthful. And really, we need to understand how to do that through nutrition, through movement, or through epigenetics. Now, epigenetics, as we know, was made famous by Dr. Bruce Lipton in his book called The Biology of Belief. It's well worth reading. I've read that book at least 3 times now. And Bruce is fantastic at explaining how, in the old 3D world, it's the body that was actually controlling the mind. So the needs of the body were telling the mind what to do. And he's basically saying, flip the switch. It's the mind that controls the body. And so if we, through focus and, very committed, um, passionate intention, want to heal ourselves, then every single cell, the 100 trillion cells in your body, listen to you and dutifully obey. And so the vast majority of healing that can go on in our lives and in our bodies can be done through the mind. It's the intentions of the mind, the healing of the mind. I had this discussion last night with my wife, Victoria, where she came home and she said, I'm getting sick. And I said, well, yes, you are, because your mind is literally helping to perpetrate the sickness inside your body. And she said, oh, yeah, but you can't come too close to me. You'll get sick as well. And I said, no, I won't. It's not going to happen, because my mind is all about health and well-being, the optimal state of health and well-being. And so I'm not open to it. I'm not interested in it. It just doesn't actually move into my consciousness, my energy. And so therefore my cells are operating, and my immune system is operating so efficiently that it's just not going to catch any of these little bugs or colds or viruses, whatever you want to call them, these pathogens that are moving around. And so it's just not open to it. And I can tell you that I literally haven't been sick in 23 years. I just don't get sick. And why would I? It's not my natural state of being. And so PQ is physical intelligence. Quantum conscious leaders know and understand how to look after themselves and keep themselves well. And as the institute grows and progresses and we get the resources, there's going to be major works of study into this to help leaders to understand how to do this and do it particularly well. Then there's IQ. IQ is mental intelligence. This is all about an understanding of how this incredible organ that we have called the brain works. It's an extraordinary organ. And, in many respects, we have been programmed through the creation of new neural pathways to have it not work for us. And so now we want to understand how to create new neural pathways that actually serve us. And while we're creating new neural pathways, we're also creating new belief systems. And so it's the understanding of neuroscience, knowledge and wisdom, our psychic abilities. We will be doing major studies on this. We're already talking about much of this. Then there's EQ, energy intelligence. They used to call EQ emotional intelligence. There's been many books written about this, but I've renamed it because emotions are energy and it's all about energy. So an understanding of the fundamentals of quantum physics, quantum conscious leaders need to know this, because it's the understanding of energy. I mean, how could you not be a leader and not understand energy and the role that your energy plays in being a leader, in terms of the development of your culture? Because I believe great cultures are not formed on the capitulation to the company's values. They're formed on energetic coherence, and that primarily comes from the leader. And then there's the understanding of intuition and gratitude, being able to access answers, truth, from being still and listening to our intuition, being able to go into a state of gratitude, which is the same vibrational state as love, 528 hertz. And gratitude, Dr. Joe Dispenza calls the ultimate state of receivership. And so gratitude is a fundamentally important vibrational state. Understanding intention and manifestation, which we've been talking about, and so much more. That's why I've got all the pluses under here. I've listed just a couple of things, but these are major fields of study. And then, of course, there's SQ. What do you think that is? Of course, it's spiritual intelligence, the understanding of what I am consciousness really is, to be the creator and to enjoy your creation. to understand dimensions, the different dimensions of reality, the different dimensions of time and space. If there is no time and space, there is only now. Time, the clocks that you see, the seconds that tick by, is a human construct. The past and the future, in many respects, exist in the current reality. They're already happening. You've already done this many times before. And so the understanding of dimensions, the understanding of ETs, extraterrestrials, different species that in many respects are already walking amongst us that we don't know about. We're starting to see this in media. I mean, I must say, I kind of laugh. This has been new finding from, NASA that reveals that there potentially was a spaceship that landed. I mean, it's like, are you kidding me? And I know that many of the people on the planet are really just starting to get a glimpse of this. But my view is that many species, potentially hundreds of different species, are in human form and walking amongst us. And I would say that now, in our current timeline, um, most of those species are very much working with us and trying to aid us, trying to help us. And so the understanding of the cosmos, what is our universe? What's our cosmos all about? Are there different planets? Of course there are. Are there different species? Of course there are. And so much more. And so this starts to give you a picture of what the quantum conscious leader is equipped with, knows and understands. And so let's have a look at this. I created this little idea to give you a comparison between the old way of leadership and the 5D way of leadership, the 3D lower density way of leadership, and the enlightened, expanded, conscious way of leadership. So in the 3D world is all about command and control. And I can tell you, as a chief executive of four different multi-million dollar companies, that was the game we played. In the 3D world, it was all about command and control. But in the 5D world, it's all about being visionary. In the 3D world, the focus was on profit and still is in many senses. It's all about making money at almost um, any expense. And what I don't mean is physical expense. What I don't mean is monetary expense, because of course profit is about, being able to grab as much money as you possibly can. It's usually at the expense of the people, at the expense of their clients or customers. Whereas the 5D way is really all about focusing on people. The old world is about commodities. The vast majority of everything we see out there is literally commodities. There's so many companies doing so many products that are exactly the same and packaging them in different ways. And there's so many products that have built-in obsolescence now. I saw a video yesterday where they were talking about the current version of Levi's and the old version of Levi's. The old version of Levi's was made in a way that literally lasted years, if not decades. The new version falls apart in 18 months. And so we're seeing this, world of commodity traders who are all about transactions and all about profit in the old 3D world, whereas the 5D world is all about providing value that's relevant to people, real value, lasting value that actually makes a difference, a positive difference to people's lives. The old world was all about coercion. It's all about, fear of missing out, buying because you need it. It'll add value to your life. In many respects, this has moved out of persuasion and into coercion, where the 5D reality is really all about inspiring people. It's about inspiring people. In many respects, it's about seducing people with what's really good for them. And I don't mean that word in a very linear way. I mean it in a more higher dimensional way. Enticing people, surprising people, inspiring people. The old world was all about deception, whereas the new world is all about truth. The old world is all about under-delivering. We constantly see people making massive claims, but when you actually buy the product, you're almost always disappointed because they never deliver what they promised. And they lock you into contracts, the fine print that you never get to read, where they actually force you to stay connected with them and make the price of disengagement too high. This is the old 3D reality. In the 5D world, quantum conscious leaders make promises that they always keep and then some. And so, what do I mean, then some? It's over delivering. So you make a promise and then you deliver more. And this is what creates surprise and delight. This is what creates loyalty. This is what creates really powerful, positive connections. So if you look at that list in the 5D way of leadership, that's where we're moving into. We're moving into being visionary, having a clear understanding of our purpose, focusing on people, because people are what the game is really all about, providing value, inspiring, telling the truth, and keeping our promises. So, in the remembering, it's all about being still and letting go and allowing the answers to come to you. In many respects, people are constantly looking outside for answers when all the answers are actually within. You need to go within. And if you understand any spiritual teachings at all, they talk about this all the time. Be still, go within, allow the answers to come to you, because those answers are coming from your non conscious mind, which is connected to the field of infinite possibility, the field of all answers, to the Akashic records. And these answers will come if you just slow down and allow yourself to be still. And this is a very important aspect of leadership. And so, in the remembering, we need to step up and skill up, don't we, as well? So, it's not all about just going within, because there's certain skills and capabilities in leadership that we absolutely need. And that's really all about getting the right training, coaching, guidance, and support, doing the work. We really, you really cannot just, this is where, I read the book by Rhonda Byrne, The Law of Attraction, and they missed out on one important point. You've got to visualize and then you sit back and wait for it to come to you. They kind of left out that whole idea of actually doing what's need to be done to make it happen as well. So, of course, visualization is very important. Clarity of intention is very important. Wrapping the energy around that of assumption that it's already created is very important. But then what's also important is being able to do what you need to do to have the right skills and capabilities. And that requires doing the work. From moving from internal mastery to external mastery does require action, and it requires very focused, specific, meaningful, and relevant action. And that's why this is a part of the remembering stage. Now we move into realization. Well, where are we actually going with this? We're back to I am consciousness. If you really understand spirituality, you'll understand that it's all about expanding your I am, your source, your higher self, whatever terms you want to use, consciousness, and actually living in that state. It's about being competent as a leader. And so there's very practical operational aspects to leadership as well. You've got to know how to create cultures. You've got to know how to manage finances. You've got to know how to manage operations. You've got to know how to, get the best of your people, to get the right people, to attract the right people. You could call it recruitment, but I call it attraction. Attract the right people into your organization and get them in the right role. Have them understand the overall vision, the overall purpose of the project, and get them in the right role so they can contribute in their specific way inside the harmony of the organization, which then becomes vastly more than the organization. The potential, the delivery, the realization becomes vastly more, in many respects, a multiple of those people and their contribution. And there's got to be fundamental competence in that. You've got to know how to do it, the practical aspects of that as well. And then, of course, that leads to your ability to truly contribute. And I must say that a lot of this may sound very difficult, but it's actually not. It's actually shifting out with ease and grace and elegance out of the old self, letting go of all that old self, that old programming, which can be challenging in its own right. And understanding and adopting the new, true, higher you and what you're here to do, what you're here to contribute, and then the joy of absolutely contributing that to people in a way that is relevant and meaningful for them. And so that's what being an infinite, divine, sovereign creator is all about. It's about being in the high performance state of heart led conscious success flow. Flow, the high performance state of heart led conscious success flow, and then helping others to do the same. And so, as leaders, aren't we here to do that? Aren't we here to actually help people who want to be helped to move into this level of awareness, consciousness, into this level of competence, into this level of contribution, so they can be sovereign as well? They can be self sustaining as well. They don't need to be attached to us, constantly looking for our support. When they become self sufficient, that's what sovereignty is all about. And so, one of the classical cornerstones of being a quantum conscious leader is being sovereign. And sovereign is self sufficient in many respects. And don't we want a world of quantum conscious leaders that are actually sovereign, that are there to do their own work and contribute into the rebuilding of this incredibly beautiful world and into its realization of its true self, where we actually, we see the reality of the real Mother Gaia and the people on this planet contributing and in harmony with Mother Gaia, and we help others to do the same. So this is our way to live our truth for the betterment of ourself, our family, and humanity. And it's the way of being energy. It's the way of creation. It is the way of leadership. And that's really what we want to do. We want to be able to master energy. And I've said this many times, quantum conscious leaders learn to master energy so they can master everything. And that's their own energy first, of course. And then through the clarity of passionately held intention to create, to use that energy to create, to manifest, to make material in their reality what they passionately intend. And so the skills and capabilities, the inevitable skills and capabilities of the quantum conscious leader are clarity, consciousness, intuition, energy, to be in a high vibrational state of energy constantly, to be able to connect with everything, everywhere, and to understand that connection and how you, being your sovereign self, influences everything that you're connected with, which is everything. To be creative, to create, to be productive, to understand through the competence that you've developed that you can be highly productive, which is all about meaningful growth and progression, and to manifest everything you passionately intend. And then, of course, it goes beyond that, doesn't it? The quantum conscious leader into the I am consciousness, where you develop other skills and capabilities. And some people talk about this, but I actually believe all of these things are our natural state of being: clairvoyance, levitation, being psycho-intuitive, astral projection. We know that there's specific leaders out there who are talking about this, who have these abilities. And we kind of look at them and say, wow, you've got these incredible capabilities, but so do you. You have them. You just haven't been to understand them, to access them, and to realize them as yet. But you will, to energetically heal epigenetics, to use telepathy. We know Sky Prince communicates with other species, other beings, through the process of telepathy. That's how she talks to them. She said that the other day, remote viewing. And so this is our natural state of being as a quantum conscious leader. And isn't this what we're here to learn how to do, to understand, to comprehend, and then to put it in action to realize it? And so let me go back to this most important definition. Quantum conscious leaders are free to realize the joy of source self and divine reason for being, while inspiring others to do the same, to get internal mastery, and then to exercise that for the good of every life, to enhance every life in the external environment, which is external mastery. This is all about being the new breed of 5D leader, the quantum conscious leader.